Hey everyone, my name's Glenn and welcome to our first kind of public gathering as a little community, and this is our fourth attempt at doing this. The fourth attempt, so the first time was COVID lockdown 1, the second time was COVID lockdown 2, actually the day of COVID lockdown 1 and 2, we timed our gathering for that. The third one was I got COVID the day before launch, and this time we're all well. So let's just have a cheer for the fourth time success. Hey, gosh. Hey, look, it means a lot that you guys are here to be with us on the first kind of big public thing that we're doing. And just big cheer for you guys. Thank you so much for coming and supporting us on our first day. I just want to outline what we're going to be doing today. So today is part of a series of 6 weeks, and this is our kickoff week, obviously. And each week we're going to have a different person like Klaus sitting here. Big hand for Klaus Letamaki. And we're going to have a different host and from different walks of life. So we've got Klaus this week, we've got different people each week from different walks of life. We've got social workers, we've got nurses, we've got public servants, we've got all kinds of people that are going to be hosting and being part of our discussion together, just to add some colour and variety and to make sure that the stuff we're talking about, this series is obviously about forgiveness, is something that affects every one of us in all walks of life, and it affects us, Glenn and Kylie and Klaus. We are also doing our own work in this area of forgiveness. So we think keeping this fresh is normalising the fact that this is something for everyone, that we all do, and we want to make sure that's part of it. So I want to introduce my wife, Kylie Smith. Give her a big hand. Kylie's a clinical psychologist in practice over at McGregor, and so she's going to be bringing perspective of a clinical psychologist throughout this series, which is going to be a bit interesting for us. And I know sometimes Christians are a bit funny about psychologists and psychologists are a bit funny about Christians, so this is a great chance for us to normalise this kind of behaviour, because I'm not funny about her. Well, not often, and she's not funny about me, not often. We're going to have a chance to normalise some of that. And I think that's about all the housekeeping I wanted to have. If you need the bathrooms, they're through the back door on the left. And maybe Klaus is going to kick off our little time together. Let's give him one more hand. Fantastic.
I remember 2 years ago.
Yeah.
2.5 years ago, we were in Canada.
Whoa.
We were visiting Canberra.
Yeah.
It was February, March, and we were having a barbecue at your place.
Yes.
You had just gotten a pizza oven or
yeah,
something.
That's right. Yeah, we had.
Testing that out.
Yeah.
It was a bit of like an initial gathering of people who were on the journey of sort of doing something new.
Yeah.
And the name Rhythms had come up.
That was a thing, yep.
And being like Jesus and being with him, becoming more like him, and life-giving rhythms that support that.
Yeah, healthy rhythms of humanity, yep.
And here we are, 2.5 years later.
Here we are, you say like it was really
Canberra,
quick.
And you guys are finally getting this off the ground.
That's it.
But the really beautiful thing about this journey has been, from my perspective at least, just once again highlighting the fact of how important process is.
Yeah.
Not just an event, not just, events after it, but the process.
Yeah, sure.
Everything that has happened with you guys and with the team throughout this process that has then led to this.
Yeah,
all the changes internally and the thinking and the mindsets and what this is actually about and the bigger picture that you guys are putting together. This has just been one piece and part of it.
Exactly, yeah.
So congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's exciting that it's underway.
Very good, very good. So what is this series about? This is the first of 6.
Yeah, this is the first of 6. So I guess that this series is based, I'll let Kylie talk about this in a sec, but this is based on a little book that Kylie's written with me doing the appendix, cheer for me, called Sorry Not Sorry, When You Want to Forgive, But It's Complicated. So we wanted to thought, we'll take this book that she's written and look at sort of the common things that human beings struggle with around forgiveness. And Kylie's going to offer some stuff from a clinical point of view, and I'll offer some stuff from a church point of view, a Christian point of view, and hopefully we'll meet somewhere in the middle. But this is really an expression of a bigger vision that we have for Rhythms, which is to build a community for people who maybe don't fit into regular kind of church communities or other community groups where that wasn't kind of working for them. Like, we're not anti that. We love that, as you all know. We're here for all of that in every way. But we thought there was like other ways of thinking about this as well, that we wanted to try and experiment, do different things, which is why our structure today is like a panel, and we're going to talk through some things and just a different way of looking at, different lens, different way of approaching some of this stuff. We really wanted to integrate science and faith. That's been a big trigger for the next generation folk, and we thought, well, we're well placed to look at sort of brain science and faith coming together and some of the insights that kind of offers. So that was really important for us, and we wanted to also engage young people in that journey. So like you said, this is one prong of a bunch of things we're doing. Another important prong for us is what we're calling The Shed, which is a recording studio and art studio that we're sponsoring as a community space in McGregor, which is right near where we live, which is going to be a hub for community to do creative work, because we think it's really important that we engage our community in environments where they can do creative work together. And we find that's really good to unlock them and open kind of, soul work and all that kind of stuff will come together in that space as well. So that's a real mission space for us. So all of that's coming together in a really loose kind of community of hangers-on and folk that hang out with us, and we love it. We love just being together. Like, a lot of our work happens over coffee, red wine, other different gatherings around tables. So this is exciting to do something a bit different here as well. Yeah, so that's kind of the gist of what we're doing here.
And there's cameras here. This is going online.
Yeah, so we're recording everything. These cameras actually are part of our creator space. We just kind of nicked them to do this. They're actually for kids to shoot their YouTubes on, but we're going to nick them to record this as well. So that's all part of the journey that we wanted to incorporate. Yeah, cool.
And this is based on a book, or which way did it go? The book first, or the series, or both hand in hand? What's the story behind it?
I think the book was just a bit of a spontaneous thing that I did, and that sort of somehow found its way into Rhythms.
Yeah.
I just want to say, I don't know whether this fits here or not, but we do have copies of the book. But the book, if you just want the information, you don't have to buy the book. The book PDF is available on the Rhythms website. Is that correct?
It's not quite yet.
Okay.
What we have on the Rhythms website is you can sign up for our mailing list.
Okay.
And we have a link to it in the mailing list.
Yeah.
So just sign up for that. You can go to our website. Just scroll to the bottom. There's like join our mailing list, and every Monday I'll send out the notes and I'll send out a PDF of that book.
Yeah, so you can access all of the information that we're going to be talking about over these 6 weeks. If you would like to buy the book, you can do that as well. And all of the proceeds of that will be going back into The Shed, which is the community art space that Glenn was talking about before. So, just want to get that out of the way. So
Fabulous. Fabulous.
Yeah, so...
And the story behind this whole theme and topic.
Well, I suppose that in terms of me writing the book, the kick-off was in a session that I was having with somebody, a client, and she's somebody in her life she's having issues with, and she said to me, when I first started coming here, I thought that I just had to forgive them, but there's a little bit more to it than that, isn't there? And I thought, that's a really big question. Is there? And then, I don't know, I just experienced this 48 hours after that where I just got this massive download, and I was reflecting on that, and I'm like, I just wrote continuously for 48 hours and, fiddled with it for the next kind of 3 years. And so that's been the journey of the book, So, and I mean, in it is, like, it's come out of my own personal journey of, dealing with people and having to forgive them. It's come out of hearing other people's stories with that journey from all walks of life. So yes, Christians, not necessarily Christians. This is something that everybody grapples with from time to time.
I think it's really important that you name that this is like a universal human experience.
Yep.
I mean, obviously, church folk hear a lot about forgiveness as a recurring theme, but this is something that all of us struggle with, right?
Mm.
Yeah, it's good.
Yep.
I just struggled with it today.
With me?
No, at home. I have 3 teenagers.
Oh, wow, yes.
3 teenagers, and I said something a little carelessly, and one of them took it the wrong way, and felt a little hurt with the way she heard it, and so then I had to apologise. I had to say, I am sorry.
Yeah.
And I had to say it a couple of times. One time wasn't enough.
Okay.
And we had to talk through it and everything. So this happens all the time.
Totally, totally.
Everyday life. It's a big part of our relationships. And
for sure. One thing you've talked before with me about, Kylie, is about how you feel the sort of emotional side of this sometimes gets a bit lost.
Well, okay, this is just my personal perspective, but, I've been around churches for about 20 years or something, and, there is lots of good teaching around forgiveness, but I did feel when I was really struggling with some, fairly big-time stuff, that some of that does get lost in translation. So there is teaching. For example, a lot of the time we would hear things like, oh, it's a decision, it's a choice, it's not a feeling. But there are all these massive feelings that go with it, and that was rarely addressed in churches, and I found that really frustrating because I was like, well, what do I do with all of this anger?
Yeah.
How do I deal with that? And that was almost dismissed, like that's not an important part of it, but it is.
Yeah.
So that was something really on my heart, I suppose, was blending that psychology lens with the theology around it and making it more accessible to people.
Yep.
Just coming out of my own, I don't know, I felt like there was a lack of accessible resources,
sure.
When I was grappling with it. So, yeah.
And I think just as a bit of a heads up, I guess, in terms of the book and in terms of the series, there'll be different weeks when we sort of focus on different feelings that go with this. So, for instance, next week we're talking about some of the justice issues, like, well, this seems super unjust that we forgive this person. They've done this horrendous wrong to us, and that seems like that shouldn't be, that should have a better resolution than what's happening here. And the week after we'll talk about anger, like what do we do with all this anger? Like something's been violated, we feel angry, like where does that go? And we're going to talk a bit about that. And sometimes the ruminating, that's a big deal for this forgiveness, right? Someone's done something to us and it's like, it just sits there in our head and it keeps coming back again and again and again. So we've got a session where we just talk about getting unstuck from thoughts that are sticky, those kind of sticky thoughts. So over the course of the series, we'll spend time looking at all of those different things. But today we thought we were sort of focused on what forgiveness is and isn't. So I guess we'll dive in a bit more to that.
Well, what does forgiveness look like in your spaces? You're connected to different kind of communities.
Yeah. Well, I guess from a faith point of view, obviously forgiveness is something we talk about again and again because it is at the core of what it means to be a follower of Jesus, to both receive forgiveness and to extend it. So that's obviously been a really big deal. I think, though, we don't often grapple with it. I think we often bring a lens to it that's, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to forgive people. But like we just said, supposed to doesn't really solve a lot of those big emotional things. Supposed to doesn't solve a lot of those tensions around justice. Supposed to doesn't deal with ruminating thoughts and those kind of things that get sticky with us. So I think one of the things that I wanted to have a through line on this series from a faith point of view was I think we need to get past God as headmaster, who's holding us accountable and making sure things are done just so, and move away from that into a more relational model of being with him that is perhaps a bit more of a friendship invitational model when it comes to forgiveness, that it's not that God is commanding us into this because it satisfies some rule that he has. He's inviting us into this transformation because it leads us to flourishing. This is a move towards flourishing, and Kylie will talk a little bit about values and whatnot later, but I think that little mindset shift is a really big deal, because I know when I struggled most with forgiveness, it was driven by duty. This is what I have to do because he wants me to do this, so I have to do this. But I think once it moved out of that and into some place where, this is a God that loves me and wants the best outcome here for me and for his other children. And this is part of a healing work, not just part of a duty, has to be done kind of work. I think that mindset is really super core when it comes to this topic. So I guess that's a big deal, I think, in kind of communities that I hang out with.
Was there anything specific that triggered that kind of change, light bulb moment?
It was hanging out with people who had that. I think that's what it was for me. I particularly remember hanging out with an older guy. He was maybe in his 70s. He was visiting with us from South Africa, and he said, "Glenn, can I give you a different model of being with God one that's around friendship, where you and God are looking out together over your life, and we're looking at this as, okay, there's some healing and work that needs to be done here. And immediately it was different. Immediately we're now working together rather than some combative kind of, Glenn, you need to forgive, God, I don't want to forgive. So it was now we're looking together on this. So that was a big deal for me, yeah. So that's my journey, I guess.
And Kylie, you've got a bit of a different space where you operate mainly?
I do. I'm just going to throw out a bit of a random thought before I forget it, because I feel like it's important, and it sort of fits with what you were saying there, is that a lot of the things that we will do over here will be experiential, but everything is an invitation. So we really do want it to be a safe space, even though we are going to be talking about some,
hard
reasonably
things.
difficult feelings and that sort of thing. So, please... everything is opt-in. Please don't ever feel pressured or forced to do any of the activities that we ask you to do or invite you to do. So I know that.
Awesome.
A little bit of a curveball, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Yeah.
So what about your community? One of the things, like the forgiveness piece you talked about, the heaviness is one that comes up a lot when you talk with people.
Okay. I guess, in terms of why.
Yeah, drivers.
Why does this... Drivers?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think whether you're a Christian or not, most people recognise that when you are holding on to things and experiencing unforgiveness, it feels heavy. It doesn't feel nice. It consumes us. It takes a lot of effort to carry that around with us, whatever we're doing.
Yeah.
And it actually, having that load on our back all the time, it stops us from doing the kinds of things that we want to do and being the kind of person that we want to be. So, whether you have a faith background or whether you don't, that is true for you. So that's probably the driver.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to just ask a follow-up, and I'm not hosting class, but I'm going to ask a follow-up because she talks about things at home, and I think she should talk about that to people because people would really benefit from that. One of the conversations you've had a lot with me is around values.
Yeah.
Maybe could you talk a little bit about forgiveness and values, and like this is stuff you do with people. You talk about values and moving toward values or away from values, and clean pain and dirty pain and different things like that. Can you just give us a bit of a soldier's five on that?
Sure. I can. Values is probably something that will crop up over the 6 weeks that we are talking. I guess in terms of the why, again, values are things that matter to us. At the end of the day, what are we about? Who are we? What's driving us? What kind of person do we want to be? What kind of life do we want to live? If we are Christians, then forgiveness is something that is fairly foundational to our faith. The cross.
Yeah.
Forgiveness comes up. It is a value that we probably will come up with in our encounters with Jesus, through the scriptures, that sort of thing. So I guess, the benefit is there then that, this is a thing. And so if we want to live a value-consistent life, even though it's hard, this is something that people are willing to journey with and, struggle with, because it is something that matters to them. It's part of, what they are about and who they want to be. I'm not sure
that's really good. I mean, when because I know Kylie's talked a lot with me about values, to say, sometimes in my thinking I will say, when I've dealt with this forgiveness thing, then I'll move forward. But it's not. It doesn't have to be like that. It's not like we have to resolve all the problems and then we can move. It's like, I've got a value that I want to move towards life, and there's this whole bunch of stuff here that's still going on, but I can still keep moving. And I think that was a really helpful thought for me. So say, for instance, whether it's shame or rejection or disappointment, it's like, I value moving towards health. And all of those things are around here. And I don't have to resolve all of those things to move towards health. I can move towards health straight away. Because in my head, I'll be like, okay, when I'm over this rejection thing, then I'll step into confidence. But it's not like that. It's like, no, I need to move towards confidence now because God wants confidence for my life. And there's this rejection thing that's hanging around, but it can hang around, that's fine. It's not going to stop me keeping moving towards that. And I think that's been such a helpful thing for me.
Okay. So I guess in the context of forgiveness, possibly, somebody could say, when I've forgiven them, God will like me, or
Yeah, for sure.
or I'll be able to do these things, or that sort of thing. And we're probably skipping ahead a little bit here, but you can make that decision and have that posture of wanting to forgive a person, and the outworking of the feelings is not going to happen in a moment. That's going to be its own process, and that's okay. So,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, that whole idea of, I've said this now. I've said, I'm going to forgive Klaus because he's offended me.
Yeah.
But nothing feels different.
Yeah, I'm still angry at him. Yeah, yeah. So does that mean it didn't work?
Yeah, does that mean it didn't work? Does that mean I haven't forgiven them?
Does that mean I'm not a good enough Christian?
Yeah. Does that mean that's not
If
enough?
I was a better Christian, I'd feel different?
Transformed?
Yeah,
different?
It doesn't really work like that, not in our experience anyway. So,
So this is a journey. It's a
Yeah,
journey towards
that's
that. And I can
okay,
keep
yeah.
journeying through that even if the feelings haven't yet come along.
Yep. That's
Yeah.
one process. And, the thing that you always hear about in churches, which is it's a choice, it's a decision.
Yep.
That's that process.
That's
they
that
work
process.
together.
They work
Yeah,
together.
yeah.
Good.
Anything else you'd like to add about what forgiveness means to you
About what it means to me.
Yeah. in your realm as a psychologist, working with people from that perspective?
I guess the only thing I would add to that is that possibly when I'm working with clients who don't have Christian background, might be from a secular background, the rhetoric around that is often that you do it for you. You do it not for the other person. You do it so you can feel better. And talking about this analogy that you hear sometimes of unforgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. So, those things are true, I think, and those things are helpful. Possibly when working with Christians, there's a few more layers to that, which is what we talked about before, is that, we have a model in Jesus of somebody who shows us how because of what he did for us on the cross.
Yeah.
So it is, we do it because he is our leader and we do what he does.
Yeah.
We do it for us because, God's ways work.
Mm-hmm.
And even though they're hard, things go better when we do things God's way.
Yeah.
So we do it for us.
Yeah.
And, we do it for the other person.
Yeah.
But by no means do I mean that those things are simple, and that's what we're going to be unpacking over the next 6 weeks. So,
Glenn,
super good.
in your world?
I think when we approach this, I think there's a few dimensions that forgiveness happens in. Like Kylie said, I think there is this healing dimension. It's like, I'm angry with Klaus, and because I'm angry with Klaus, there's a whole lot of things happening here.
I'm starting to think that you're really angry with me. 'Cause you're repeating yourself.
Well, just because you're a person I'm not angry with. So, So I think there's this healing dimension that happens in me. I think there's also this justice dimension, because Klaus has wronged me in small or catastrophic ways, and I think we need to resolve that somehow. And I think burying it, or saying it didn't matter, or saying it doesn't happen, or saying it doesn't affect, or whatever, is not helpful. It's not helpful in getting it sorted. So I guess that's that whole reconciliation sort of dimension that we have to think about. And I think there's also like this community dimension, because if I'm burned up with Klaus, then this affects Kylie, and it affects Zoe, and it affects Isaac, and it affects my workmates. Like, all of those people are part of the splash or the blast radius of what's happening here, right? Yeah. So I think that's a dimension that we have to kind of think about. And if I could just draw something on the whiteboard, because the whiteboard is there,
I know you love
and it's
whiteboards.
calling my name and saying,
I was wondering
hey,
what it's doing here.
can I just draw you a picture? And many of you have seen this picture, because it's a picture I draw with our crew all the time. And it is kind of the model that I bring to when we think about what we're doing here. And so if you imagine that this is now my drawings aren't great, so bear with me. If you imagine that these are two houses, okay? And these houses represent our life. In fact, both houses represent our life, if I can get a bit kind of meta here. But this one here is the house, this is the house of fear, right? And this is the house of shame. What a great house. Who wouldn't want to live here? This is a house of rejection. This is the house of offense. This is the house of addiction. Not a great house, but all of us have rooms like this in our house. And then this is the house that I think that God invites us to live in. This is the house of love. This is the house of joy. This is the house of faith. This is the house of hope. This is the house of healing. This is the house of, you name it, okay? And the journey here is the journey that we were talking about. Jesus called this the coming of the kingdom of God. It's about when God rules in our hearts, what happens? And there's a transformation that moves us from here to here. And this is the vision that drives us. This is good news. This is part of what the gospel means. It means we're moving out of these places. We could put, if you like religious labels, we can put sin over here, and maybe we can put holiness over here. But we're moving, we're in motion. But this looks awesome on a whiteboard because it's so linear, isn't it? It's just like, boom, I was with shame, I was struggling with rejection, I was struggling with addiction or offense, and boom, I've moved linearly. But of course, it doesn't look like this. It looks kind of like this, right? This is how it actually looks. But the good news is that there are two things that are at play here, as Kylie said, that we need two things for this to happen. One of them that we need to have happen is a Messiah. So we need someone who's got some power, a king that can throw their weight around and really help us in this journey. And the other thing we need is I'm going to draw a book, but it's not really a book. It's actually a model. We need some teaching, some information, some way to do this. And as Kylie said, that this is, for people of faith, Jesus is the one that offers us this model of how to do life, how to deal with offense, how to deal with people that are extremely aggravating, annoying, wanting to do us harm. So I guess that this is the vision that drives us. When we talk about going on this journey of forgiveness, it's not about compliance. It's about an invitation into a new and better way of living, one that we're not kind of constrained by all this shame, rejection, fear, pain, suffering, etc. So that's kind of my 2 cents worth on why this is good news for us.
It is good news. It's gospel.
Oh, you can't see anything. You didn't see anything. I drew that whole thing.
I heard you explain it. It's all good. I think I got the gist of it.
Oh, fantastic. Good. I've probably drawn it for you 100 times, so that's probably okay.
Yeah, and when you read through the Gospels and the Jesus story, that's what he's always doing.
Yeah.
He's inviting people into more life, fuller life, greater extents of life, just more life and life and life. And forgiveness obviously plays a big part in it.
For sure, right? For sure. Because of that heaviness that Kylie was talking about. Like, unforgiveness has a weight and a heaviness on us, and it stops relationship and flourishing. And that's what we want. We want to be flourishing, right? That's what we want. Totally.
Starting with our relationship with God.
Yeah.
There.
For sure.
On it goes. Okay. What assumptions do you have that sort of underlie this series?
Oh, yeah.
These 6 weeks?
Yeah, so this is out of Kylie's kind of book. She lays out, some big ideas to build on, I guess, right? Is that what how would you describe these assumptions?
Yeah, just as assumptions. These were things that were presumed, I guess. And it's helpful to frame them up at the beginning. Like, this is our theology on the topic.
Yeah.
Just putting it out there. So everything should be interpreted in the context of these 6 premises.
Yeah.
Does that,
Yeah, that's good.
So what are they?
So I think the first one is what we just talked about initially, is that God is good. That he's not an angry headmaster that's, out to get us or whatever. He's actually a loving God who has a friendship extended towards us in this journey. And I think that's one of our fundamental ideas, is that God is good, I guess.
What else?
Yep. So our second one is that God loves us and he wants us to live in freedom. I think this is really important because it provides safety.
Right.
If God is not the headmaster and that he loves us and he wants to journey this with us, then it's safe for us to be honest with him about what's really going on in terms of, especially our emotional or psychological world, so we can be with him in our anger or, whatever other unacceptable thoughts or feelings that we might think that we have. If we're coming from a premise that he loves us, and he has access to all of those emotions. He knows them anyway.
Yeah.
But if we're going to sort of name it and invite him into those places because we trust him that he's not going to stab us, he's going to love us as we do that, then we can make progress.
Oh, super love that.
Cool.
Yeah, no, I really do. So, I really love that model of like the iceberg. There's that little bit at the top and then there's all this underneath work. And we often don't want to go there because we think it's not safe. But like you're saying, God is the one that brings safety to that process. So we can confront some of the dark things that are happening inside of us.
So that's the God that we are representing.
Yeah.
You know, not the other God that we sometimes becomes that critic, harsh, you know, punitive God.
Yeah.
That's not the God that we see or
Serve or love.
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure. Super good. She's really good at this.
Other ones?
Well, our third one, this is probably the toughest one to swallow, or at least one of the toughest ones to swallow, is that God also loves those who have wronged us. And that's really super hard, especially those who, you know, when it comes to people who have wronged us in catastrophic ways, like ways that we perhaps in our initial narratives would say, we're not going to recover from this. This is too violating, traumatic that I could ever recover. And the idea that God would forgive them, or that we would forgive them, like that's a pretty tough pill to swallow. And I think it's important to just not get too far ahead on that line, though, because I know that we're going to open the Bible in a sec. You won't believe it, but we are. And we're going to look at sometimes these verses around forgiveness have been weaponized against people that are going through trauma, to say, you know, you have to forgive. God says forgive, you must forgive. And I think that's not how Jesus would relate to people who are struggling in this area, and he doesn't relate to us as we struggle in this area. So I think it's important for us to say that, yes, God loves those who've wronged us in small and catastrophic ways, and even if we can't yet get to the point where we can buy into that, we can say we want to buy into that. We want to get to the point where we can buy into that, and that can be part of our journey. So I think that's probably important to name.
Yeah, number 4 is related to that, which is that, you know, the Bible is pretty clear. God does ask us to forgive others.
Yeah.
But the way he does that is loving, and he's patient and he's kind.
Yeah. That's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, love that. Forgiveness can be hard, but God doesn't ask us to do impossible things. And I think that's important to name as well. And like on our little diagram here that we've drawn, we have to understand that God is at work in this process. It's not just us gritting our teeth and doing the heavy lifting. Yeah. The Bible calls this grace, and grace means that God acts in our life to do things that we can't do on our own. That's what grace means. And so when we go on this journey of forgiveness, we're actually dependent on grace. We're dependent on God acting to do what we can't do on our own. I love what Dallas Willard says, that we should be burning grace like a 747 burns fuel on takeoff. We should be relying on the fact that God is going to do the heavy lifting in this work, even though he does invite us into the work with him. We don't have to come with the heaviness of thinking, oh, it's all up to me. Like, we already have a Messiah, that job's taken, so we don't have to enter into that role. Yeah, I think that's important.
And the last one is just that God's ways work. So yeah, just as we were saying before, like ultimately things are going to go better for us when we do things God's way. Doesn't always feel like it at the time, but we can trust him that, you know, we'll get there, and that he's with us and
good.
for us as we do it. And it's going to be better for us if we do things his way.
Great.
We'll be looking at what forgiveness looks like, what it's based on,
what it is,
sort of the foundational ideas underlying it. What is it not?
I think it's important to name what it's not, like Mythbusters, I suppose, if you like. So forgiveness is not being a doormat. It's still okay and important to have boundaries and to set limits with people. When you forgive people, it doesn't mean that they can just have, you know, a free-for-all in your life and with you. Both those things are applicable and important.
It's good.
Yeah. And the second myth we've got here is forgiving someone doesn't mean you have to reconcile with them. It's okay not to have that person in your life anymore. You may choose to, you may choose not to. That's okay. You can still, it's not contingent on that. You can still forgive a person and have that boundary of, I can't have you in my life anymore.
Yeah, I think it's important to name that, because reconciliation is like a two-way deal, right? It has to be
right.
Both ways.
It's a different concept.
You can't really control how people respond or what they do, whatever. And if they're perpetrating harm and continue to perpetrate harm,
Yeah.
then there's nothing loving about letting them keep doing that to you.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
otherwise you'd be stuck, wouldn't you, if you were dependent on something that you can't control?
Yeah, for sure.
Which is their behaviour.
For sure.
So that doesn't impact your work or your process.
I mean, reconciliation may not even be, like they may be dead.
Yeah, exactly.
They may be living in another country. Like there's all sorts of reasons why that might be not in scope as well.
100%. Yeah,
in addition to, stopping harm.
Okay.
Cool.
And the last myth we've got is that if you forgive somebody, you're not saying that what happened isn't important or that it didn't matter. It did matter. It cost you. And forgiving the perpetrator doesn't mean that it was okay.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Well,
Fabulous.
let's bring it back to the gospel and what the Bible has to say about it.
Yeah, I want to actually start in a place that we probably hear a lot of, but I thought it would be good just to revisit it. And this is revenge from Matthew 5. So the heading in my Bible is teaching about revenge. And this is Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount. And he said, "You've heard the law that says that punishment must match the injury, that an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say, do not resist an evil person. If someone slaps you on the right cheek, offer the other cheek also. And if you're sued in court and your shirt's taken, you should give your coat too. If a soldier demands you carry his gear for a mile, carry it too. Give to those who ask and don't turn away from those who borrow." I wanted to just have a quick look at this because there'd be many of us that would be familiar with that phrase of turning the other cheek, for instance, like that kind of thing. And I think somewhere along the way, we've interpreted that, and this is, of course, his right hand going to right cheek. So it's, let me just demonstrate. Did you catch that?
A little bit of a...
So this is an act of shamefulness. This is saying, Klaus, you're nothing. I will treat you like nothing. In culturally, first century, culturally this is, you're nothing. You're nothing. And Jesus invites us to say, no, we shouldn't. In reacting this, we are not going to retaliate. Retaliation and revenge is not our strategy, but we have other strategies. And in fact, Klaus's other cheek is his cheek that he deals with me at the same level as I am. Okay, so he's not being treated like a doormat. He's relating to me as a person now. And so there is a shift that goes on in this deal. And I think it's important to name this because this isn't Jesus saying, let people harm you, continue to harm you, treat you like garbage. He's saying, but I want you to respond not with violence and revenge. I want you to respond with non-violence. As I like how, I love how, what's his name, that bishop that we love, the English guy. N.T. Wright. I love how N.T. Wright says this. He says, this isn't about doormatting or failing to meet evil. This is about meeting violence with a new sort of creative, healing, restorative justice. That's what this is about. And I think when we ground this and start to look at this in Scripture, we can't lose sight of who Jesus is and how he is. And he is not loving people by letting them perpetrate evil. Allowing evil to flourish is not our response. But he's saying the way we respond to evil isn't with more evil. We respond with transformative justice. And I think that's a little thing I wanted just to start our little discussion. That honestly, what would it mean to reflect God's generous love despite the provocation? We're being provoked. We're being treated like garbage when I'm slapping you like this. But what would it mean to respond in a way that's actually transformative towards people rather than to respond with more violence? And I think that's the challenge for us. And I think actually for most of us, this is a more difficult challenge. Because if I said to you, one of the ways that we're going to learn to respond in this areas of forgiveness is actually to start negotiating healthy boundaries with people. And some of us, like I'm amongst this, negotiating healthy boundaries with people is really uncomfortable work. Because they're now currently trampling all over my boundaries. They're currently doing this to me. And I'm saying, no, I don't want to relate to you in this manner anymore. I will not let you treat me like this anymore because it's not loving for you. It's not loving for me. So let's renegotiate how this is working and find some healthy boundaries about how we're going to do life together. How many of you that's going to be a difficult journey for? Only 3 of us. Fabulous. Okay, so 3 or 4 of you that's going to be a difficult journey for. But that's definitely one of the areas that I think is going to be a difficult journey for me over this time together. Yeah, so working with boundaries.
I remember somebody sometimes saying, one time saying that when it comes to people who are just constantly slapping you on the face and
Yeah.
they can't help themselves. That's just the way they operate.
Yeah.
The only way to draw boundaries is with locks and lawyers.
Right.
But it doesn't negate the fact that we still need to forgive.
We still do need
Yeah,
to forgive.
yeah. So
Absolutely.
we need to, regardless of the boundary drawing,
Yes.
we need to still work through it in our hearts.
Because we have that pain going on, right?
And that's where walking with Jesus through this all is so crucial.
Super
because
cool.
without him, I mean, on our own,
We're not gonna make it.
We're lightweight.
We're lightweight.
Yeah, when we're dealing with really heavy blows and deep wounds.
Oh, definitely, right?
That need to be, healed layer by layer again
Exactly.
and again. And so coming back to Jesus and working with him and his spirit, that's the...
Love it.
All right.
Hey, we thought we'd have some time for questions.
Do we have time? We
Yeah,
do.
we do. We have time.
Okay.
We've got a few minutes. If anyone has any questions, like maybe this has kind of surfaced some things for you. I guess can I just preface this asterisk?
Go.
Kylie is a clinical psychologist, but she's not your clinical psychologist.
Yeah, I haven't
So,
been for this
so
session,
her
so-
advice will be general, not
Yeah.
specific to you. You should get your own clinical psychologist if you want specific advice for your specific situation.
Very good.
That's just my disclaimer.
That's good. That's good.
Because my name's on the insurance.
But
so.
you're everyone's pastor.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The world is my chapel, my community, whatever. Right.
All right.
World is my parish.
Any questions? Any comments?